Welcome to Week 6 of the 2024-2025 NFL season. Week 5 was a shit show for picks. I started off really well, getting only 2 picks wrong, including the first Thursday and the first set of games on Sunday, but then I proceeded to go 1-5 the rest of the way. Yeah, that's how it is in this business. Picking games is hard to do. Games turn on a dime, and never count your chickens before they hatch in this game, especially because it's just so hard. You just don't know. The parity is strong in the NFL, stronger than it ever has been. But now, like always, we'll go through week 6, top to bottom, pick all the games. There will be a separate video for the Packers versus Cardinals game, but we'll go through each one. Let me know what you think, and let's get to it with our first game of the week, the Thursday night game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. 49ers coming off another fourth quarter collapse. Seattle getting absolutely beaten by the Giants. Now, the Seahawks were definitely close to winning, but then a return for a touchdown ended that game outright. San Francisco had that game. And even with all the injuries that they have, they should have pulled that game through. Arizona wasn't anything special, but they did enough to win. And 49ers are now 2-3. And again, Kyle Shanahan has another fourth quarter breakdown on his resume. You got to imagine for the 49ers, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, I mean, Shanahan's not going to get fired. But it makes you think, will they ever get there? Probably not, because eventually those contracts are going to start to come up. And that's where teams really fall apart. You gotta get them when they're cheaper. Although, since Brock Purdy hasn't been doing that great this year, maybe he doesn't get a huge contract, but we'll see. But in this game, it's pretty well matched. Seahawks aren't as good as we thought. Their defense definitely has some questions after the last couple weeks. San Francisco defense is still solid for the most part, but like I said, they kind of collapsed last week. Their offense has been kind of all over the place. Brock Purdy's been throwing interceptions late in games and just in opportune times. Jordan Mason has been fine, but nothing special, not like he was the first couple weeks. I guess he's still been consistently getting close to 100 yards every game, so I guess that's still good. Juwan Jennings had that one game and has been nothing special since. Brandon Ayuk finally broke out. Kittle was fine, but got hurt. But in this game, when I break it down, I think San Francisco pulls it out. I think they're just a little bit better team. I just can't imagine the 49ers going 2-4. Then again, I can't imagine Seattle losing 3, starting out 3-0. Well, actually, I can. I don't think Seattle's all that good. So actually, them starting out 3-0 and being 3-3 by week 6 is totally not unexpected. But in terms of this game, I will go Giants win 24-18, something weird like that. It's going to be one of those weird NFC West games. Thursday night game, somewhat low scoring. You know how those games are, but when the NFC West plays on Thursday night, like most divisions, it's just not a great game. We now have our second game of the week, Jacksonville versus Chicago. In London, another jolly old London game. Last week's London game was pretty darn good against the Vikings and the Jets. Sam Darnold didn't play well, but, the Aaron Rodgers throws the pick at the end, and the Vikings win to go to 5-0. We'll see what happens. Jacksonville won last week. Chicago beat the fuck out of Carolina, but then again, that's expected. So those frolicking over Caleb Williams, remember, it should be expected that you beat down on a team like Carolina. It was good to see him play really well. He didn't have any picks, so maybe he'll be able to carry it into this week. Jacksonville had a big game last week. Tank Bigsby had a really big game, but again, it's against the Indianapolis Colts Pittsburgh run defense. But Trevor Lawrence was pretty efficient most of the game. Christian Kirk had a pretty nice game. ETN got hurt, so who knows what is going on with him. But I like Chicago to win this game. I begrudgingly do. Although Jacksonville does win a lot in London. So even though I think Chicago is a better team, I think Jacksonville pulls it out. I think they know what it's like to play in London. They play there every year. They got their schedule down, and they played pretty well this past week, all things considered, against a really weakened Indianapolis defense. But I'm going to go with Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence may not look the best, and frankly, Caleb Williams will probably outplay him. But I'm going with Jacksonville to win 21-17. Yes, and no, you're probably thinking, this is crazy. The Bears are going to totally mollywop the Jacksonville Jaguars. Every time that you think that happens, it doesn't actually happen. So, next. Indianapolis versus Tennessee. Tennessee coming off a bye. Indy coming off that last loss to Jacksonville. And another fairly competitive game. For Indy's sake, we'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor. It sounds like you should be able to go play right now, so that'll definitely be a boost. Anthony Richardson is going to be the starter once he is ready and healthy to go. We'll see what happens. I probably think Joe Flacco will play again because he's played pretty well, and might as well protect your future and make sure he's fully healthy, ready to go. But if Anthony Richardson plays, there's another dimension there, even though he's not the best thrower of the ball sometimes, and definitely not the most accurate. Tennessee looked decent in their first win of the season against the very woeful Miami Dolphins. We'll see what happens. Will Levis, still not great. Their running game is slowly improving. I'd still hold to my preseason prediction that Tyjae Spears will overtake, at least get a large share of the carries from Tony Pollard by the end of the season. DeAndre Hopkins is still there. He's still great. Treylon Burks has his moments at times as well. Their defense is definitely one of their few bright sides on the team. Their defense is pretty darn good. So all things considered, it's in Tennessee, so maybe that gives Tennessee the edge. But man, this one's tough. Normally in years past it would be Derrick Henry against Indy, so Derrick Henry would usually go off. But since Derrick Henry's no longer around, I will give the game to the Colts. I think the Colts win. I think they are the better team overall. Michael Pittman had a pretty good game last week. Kyle Pierce had a pretty good game last week. And if Joe Flacco is able to find his wide receivers down the field like he has been lately, I think it'll be more than enough to take down the Tennessee Titans. And in the end, Indy wins 28-25. Yeah, weird scores all around, but seems like a decent score for this game to happen. Next, Houston versus New England. New England coming off another loss where they should have absolutely won. Houston with a big win over Buffalo, even though, again, they nearly lost the game. If it had not been for Josh Allen probably playing through a concussion, Houston probably loses. And then the news is all over saying Houston blows huge lead to Buffalo Bills, and questions need to be asked about C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud had a pretty darn good game last week, but had a bad interception. I believe he had another turnover as well. But they're playing New England. I like Houston to really go up. Although Nico Collins is week to week with a hamstring injury. And for those of you who've watched football, you know how bad hamstring injuries can be. It's just one of those things that just needs to be healed. And really doesn't heal until the end of the season. So we'll see how much that affects him or if he's even able to go. No Tank Dell still. But CJ Stroud is still CJ Stroud. But gotta admit, their offense kind of fell off a little bit last week after Nico Collins went out. It's just the fact. I mean, they were still able to run the ball pretty well. Cam Akers did decently. Obviously, they're still missing Joe Mixon, but New England, again, like I said, their offensive line may be bad, but until you put Drake May out there, you're not going to be successful. I'm sorry, Jacoby Brissett just has a very low ceiling. and he may look efficient at times. He's just not great. He's not a great option. Drake May is the better quarterback, and until you put Drake May out there, there's just not much to say. Ramondre Stevenson had a decent game last week and a nice touchdown after getting benched for a while. But in the end, Houston's going to win. And I think Houston's going to win big in this one. I think it's going to be probably 35 to 14. Yeah, something like that. Houston's just a better team. New England sucks. And like I said, until they put Drake May out there, nothing new is going to change for the New England Patriots. They got their one win against Cincinnati on a fluke, on a call that definitely should have been, or that would have benefited the Bengals. The Bengals would have won, but New England is just not a good team. Just terrible. Next, we have Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. New Orleans with 3 losses after that 2-0 start. I don't know what to think about Derek Carr. Derek Carr had another terrible interception this week. Alvin Kamara has been solid but not great. Rashid Shaheed has been the best wide receiver. What is up with Chris Olave? He's supposed to be thriving. He's supposed to be doing well. He's supposed to be probably having over 500 yards by now, but he has less yards than Rashid Shaheed, and Shaheed has been the obviously better target for Derek Carr. I don't know what Olave's problem is. I get the feeling that Olave may find himself on the team eventually. He's kind of malcontent, it seems, and again, he just didn't have a good game last week, and it's not like the Chiefs secondary is all world, but God, he just barely got anything going. I think he only had like 2 catches for 15 yards. Yeah, again, if you have him in fantasy, boy, hopefully you have better options, because he's not a great option right now. He just isn't. Tampa Bay with the win. But Tampa Bay looks like to be the better team. Well, actually, no, they lost. They lost to Atlanta. How Tampa Bay lost that game against Atlanta, it still perplexes me. I picked Tampa Bay to win, and they just collapse at the end. Kirk Cousins did Kirk Cousins things, and Tampa Bay is like losing. Now, again, it probably had a decent amount to do with the fact that Baker Mayfield got injured. So hopefully he is able to go this week. I'm sure he will be. I mean, as long as you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out there, you have 2 decent running backs in Rashad White and Bucky Irving, a really good offensive line, and a somewhat up and down defense, they should still be fine. They're going to New Orleans, but as we've seen in years past, that doesn't really matter for the Chiefs when it comes to playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers seemingly have their number. So again, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. New Orleans is going to be 2-4. And again, the questions are going to be asked, how long does Dennis Allen have? Because Dennis Allen is horrible. He is one of the worst coaches in the NFL. He needs to be fired post haste. He needs to be Robert Saleh right now, because they're just already treading water right now with Derek Carr as it is. I mean, Derek Carr does have some moments here and there, but largely he's just up and down quarterback that'll give you some good moments, but most of the time he'll just make you shake your head. It's like, wow, this guy was a first-round pick, and he's just nothing special. Like I've heard Barry McCocker say this before. Either he's the worst good quarterback or the least bad quarterback, something like that. But yeah, Tampa Bay wins in this one. I think the receiving corps is going to be too much for their shaken secondary. In the end, Tampa Bay wins 28-24. It'll be a good game. It'll be a close game. But again, I just think Derek Carr is going to make too many mistakes. He's going to throw too many turnovers. And again, Tampa Bay is going to win because they have the better team. Flat out. Tampa Bay is going to win. And again, New Orleans just questions, how long does Dennis Allen have left? Next, Cleveland versus Philly. Philly coming off the bye after getting absolutely mollywopped the week before by Tampa Bay. Cleveland got beaten again. Again, Deshaun Watson, you have to ask, how much longer does he have? I know they had to pay him. I know they don't have a lot of angles to get rid of him, but the fans are getting sick of it. Their defense is too good to have to constantly lose because their quarterback is just awful. Now again, his off-field issues aside, quarterback-wise, he's just not that great anymore. He lost all his skill, taking off like basically 2 years from his suspension and other stuff. But man, I think if Philly has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they should be able to go. Hopefully that week off probably was a nice time for Philly. I know it's not great to go into the bye after getting absolutely obliterated by or a team that's beaten you a lot lately, but if Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are able to play, Philly should win easily. I mean, I know Philly hasn't been really anything special this year other than a couple games, but Philly, if they have their full complement of wide receivers, should be able to do just fine. I mean, Cleveland, Jacoby Ford is fine. Mari Cooper has his moments. David Njoku's back, so that's a nice addition. But yeah, as long as Deshaun Watson is there, just don't expect success for Cleveland. In the end, Philly wins. 24-17. Again, it's going to be a somewhat close game, but Philly pulls it out because their team is just flat out better. Their defensive attack should be able to beat down that battered offensive line, and yeah, Cleveland loses again. And I don't think Stefanski is on the chopping block, but should this team go like 2-3 wins, as good as Stefanski can be, I don't know how he survives this. Deshaun Watson, when Deshaun Watson was signed, it was Kevin Stefanski's death letter. I think it really is. But next we have probably one of the best games of the week. Washington versus Baltimore. Baltimore coming off a big win over Cincinnati. They kind of had to make a comeback, but Lamar Jackson finally had his really first true awesome performance this year. He's been great on the ground. Derrick Henry and him have been a great 1-2 combination all throughout the year. Washington, Jayden Daniels has been sour. He had that one really bad interception last week, but then he was able to come back from it and really lead the game on. He's getting a more deeper connection with Terry McLaurin, which is nice because obviously I think he's definitely their best wide receiver for sure. Brian Robinson has been running the ball tough. He's been great. He's a really underrated running back, one of the true underrated running backs in this league. Their defense is still not good. I mean, I think in this game their defense is going to be exposed big time. Their secondary is not great. And if Lamar Jackson can play like he did last week, it's going to be a long day for the Washington secondary and defense in general. Baltimore's defense has been coming along nicely. Like I said, Derrick Henry is just a ageless wonder, it seems. Who cares that he's over 30? It doesn't matter. He still is eating guys alive. Zay Flowers is developing a nice rapport with Lamar Jackson. That's coming back for sure. Again, still, Mark Andrews is still kind of mostly incognito. I believe Isaiah Likely had a touchdown last week, so that's nice. But again, their tight ends just don't seem to be a factor as much. But in the Battle of Maryland, I think Baltimore wins just because the secondary of Washington is so bad. They haven't played a lot of really good teams lately, and I think this is the week their defense really gets exposed. It's just that Jayden Daniels has been playing out of his mind, has been able to cover up the fact that parts of their defense just aren't that good. And this is the week where Baltimore pours it on, and they win. Not big, but the margin's probably going to be 10 points. So Baltimore wins 33-20. I think Jayden Daniels should have a decent game, but I think that pass rush of Baltimore should be able to get to him, should be able to get through the offensive line, and force Jayden Daniels into some uncharacteristic mistakes so far. But Have no fear, Washington will still be in it for the rest of the year. They just haven't played their division yet. And you know how the NFC East is. They beat up on each other. But if Washington is able to win this game, the sky's the limit for this year. The sky's the limit for him. I mean, truly, he's in the running for number one in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. It's hard to really pick anybody else right now. Even though Caleb Williams had a decent game last week, Jayden Daniels has been the more consistent option. And he may not get it done this week, but he'll still be first in the running after this week is done. But Baltimore wins. Next, another toss-up. The Chargers versus Denver. Chargers coming off a bye. Denver coming off another big win over Oakland. They finally beat Las Vegas, and boy, did they beat them down ever. Patrick Surtain had 2 interceptions, one for a 100-yard interception return. Bo Nix looked pretty darn good for most of the game, and the Raiders were just exposed. Boy, Raiders are just continuing to go down further and further. The Chargers, now, I think the Chargers can be a good team. It's just with the injury of Joe out, hopefully, maybe he'll be able to return this week, because you could see the difference. When Joe Alt is out there with Rashawn Slater and J.K. Dobbins running the ball, they're doing great. When he's not out there, their offensive line starts to suffer, and J.K. Dobbins since has put up 2 not really great games. I think this is another true toss-up, but honestly, I think Denver wins. Denver is going to be 3-2 after this. Well, 4-2. Denver Broncos are going to be 4-2 after this game. Although, to be honest, I think the Chargers have a really good chance to win. But it's in Denver. Denver has played really well there this year. Their defense has been firing on all cylinders. That secondary is truly a great secondary for the NFL. Who knows how Herbert is. Hopefully he's recovered from his injury at least a little bit, but it'll still probably be one of those nagging injuries for the rest of the year. Denver wins 23-20, but it's going to be a really close game. But Denver, who would have thought Denver could be 4-2 after week 6? Certainly I want to. But next, Pittsburgh versus Las Vegas. Pittsburgh coming out the loss against Dallas. Their offense didn't look very good. Las Vegas didn't look good at all, except Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers had a really nice game. Again, Brock Bowers is showing that he could be the future tight ends in the league. He looks like he could be a future Kelsey, a future George Kittle. He has all the tools. He can block, and he's a really great receiver. But Pittsburgh, Najee Harris wasn't able to get the ball going at all last week, and DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons were out, and they still couldn't really get anything going. And George Pickens, boy, if you picked him, George Pickens in fantasy like I did, boy, you're like, he's never going to be startable. He's just not. He's not even scoring touchdowns anymore, which is one of the nice things about him. He has no rapport with Justin Fields, at least not really. He's still the malcontent that he always is. But this is kind of a toss-up because, like Denver and Las Vegas before, Pittsburgh doesn't have a big history of winning against the Raiders, especially at their home or on the road. And Justin Fields wasn't great last week. He didn't make any huge mistakes, but yeah, Pittsburgh's offense was kind of exposed last week against a defense that had two of their bigger pieces not playing in the game. So, again, I think I'll give it to Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh wins 20-17, but I don't feel good about it at all. I really don't. The Raiders aren't great, and Devontae Adams may very well be on his way out, but man, Pittsburgh doesn't have a good history of winning against the Raiders on the road. But I think they get the win, and they save face after a bad week last week against Cowboys. Next, Another one of the best games of the week, Detroit versus Dallas. Rematch of last year's game that kind of ended in some controversy. Dallas still, again, we'll see if Micah Parsons is able to go. I believe DeMarcus Lawrence is out for a long time. Detroit coming off the bye. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been great. Jamison Williams has been pretty up and down, but he's had a couple of good games here and there. That rushing attack is still great. The tandem of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is fantastic. Jared Goff still making some mistakes here and there, but he had a perfect game at home against Seattle. Can't really criticize him right now. I mean, it was 18 for 18, like 299 yards and 2 touchdowns and passing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. He was fantastic. You really can't say anything bad about that performance. It's in Dallas, so maybe that gives Dallas the edge, like I always say. But Detroit, I think Detroit is going to come out swinging. They're going to come out swinging, and they're going to be running the ball down Dallas's throat. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, I think both go for at least 60 yards rushing. Jared Goff probably goes for 300. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think this is one of his really big games. I think he probably gets about 8 to 12 receptions, close to or over 100 yards, maybe a touchdown or two. But I think Detroit's going to win this, and they're going to win big. I think Detroit wins. I mean, as long as Dak Prescott is out there, he still have a chance. But again, the thing about Dak Prescott is if he can't find CD, he struggles to really succeed the week. Although he had some nice throws out there last week, but a really bad turnover as well. But Detroit's going to win this game 30-20. So it's not as big as I made it out to be, but I think Detroit's going to come out swinging with their offense this week. Their offense is going to have close to or over 400 yards of offense, and Dallas is going to lose, and he's going to be back to the drawing board once again for Mike McCarthy. Next, Atlanta and Carolina. Carolina, again, has been pretty up and down this year, although lately, ever since their win against the Raiders, they have not been great. They got mollywopped last week by Chicago. Atlanta with the big win against Tampa Bay on Thursday night. Kirk Cousins was firing on all cylinders, over 500 yards, like 3 or 4 touchdowns. He was great, especially when he throws to Drake London. There's a definite connection there. Their running game has been able to get going. Again, I'm trying to plead patience on Bijan Robinson. Apparently he's great, so apparently he's going to get it going. So, Bijan, let's have a really good game. I mean, I don't know why he struggles to run the ball. Apparently that offensive line is good, but he just hasn't really been able to find his true calling yet this year. But Carolina, not good. Even with Andy Dalton out there, and their offense does look a lot better, it's still not great. When Carolina plays a decent team, they just don't play well. They really don't. Atlanta's probably going to win this going away. Atlanta probably wins this 27-14. It is in Carolina, so Carolina has beaten Atlanta in the past for sure, but I think Atlanta has too many weapons. They're firing right now, and Carolina just, despite Chuba Hubbard had been a completely different running back since Andy Dalton has been out there, it's just not going to be enough. And in the end, Atlanta wins, and they continue to move towards a position where you can say, maybe, just maybe, they can make a run this year. Next, one of the weird games of the week, Cincinnati and the Giants on Sunday Night Football. This is a Sunday Night Football. No way to switch it out this early in the season, but Cincinnati with the loss last week, that missed field goal, man, Cincinnati had it going on. Joe Burrow had over 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they lose. It was a heartbreaker for them last week. The Giants with the big win over Seattle last week. Even though Malik Neighbors was out with a concussion, they still found a way to win. So really, this is a real toss-up. I mean, As much as you want to believe that Cincinnati is going to turn this around, I just don't think they are. It's really hard to climb out of a 1-4 hole and make any kind of impact in the playoffs. Yes, Joe Burrow is playing great, but that defense is just, it's their Achilles heel. It's their Achilles heel. Penalties for sure. Offensive line, not great, although it was better last week. Chase Brown, though, is a nice sign, especially if Zach Moss is out for the game. This could be this could be his real shot of really reclaiming or really taking over a big piece of that run share for the Bengals. Joe Burrow is still great. He still has a great connection with Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, Ja'Marr Chase, over 190 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. He's a superstar in every which way. And again, he's proving why he deserves to be paid. He has been great all year. He's been a fantastic option. He can just do it all. He just has a dead 0 to 60 speed that really you can't teach. But in the end, I think Cincinnati is able to win. Tracy was a good running back for Giants last week, but that may have been a function of Seattle's not so great run defense. But Cincinnati, I think, wins this. It's going to be relatively close, 23-20. So it's going to be a good game. Daniel Jones isn't the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's been good. You got to give him props for that. He had a really good game against Seattle, against a defense that's supposedly one of the best in the league. He's been great. Even without Malik Neighbors, he's still able to find options out there. So, again, Daniel Jones proving why, he was a first-round quarterback, but then again, you think, like, how is he not able to put this together more often? How is he not able to do this more often? It's one of those questions that will probably never be answered, but Cincinnati wins 23-20, but if the Giants win, wouldn't be shocked in the least. Next, last but not least, Buffalo versus the Jets. The Jets are just fired Robert Saleh as an hour ago as I'm recording this. So who knows what's going to happen? Coach Ulrich is going to take over in the interim. So lucky for them, Nathaniel Hackett will not be the interim head coach for the New York Jets. But for the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is taking over this team. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it was Aaron Rodgers that said to fire Robert Saleh. It would not surprise me at all. The Buffalo Bills coming off that big loss to Houston. How did they blow the game? I don't know. It probably had something to do with Josh Allen possibly having a concussion. Now, we'll see. I'm sure Josh Allen will be in concussion protocol this week. I'm sure there will be questions if he's able to go. I still expect Josh Allen to play this week and be his old Josh Allen. So, yes, the Jets have a pretty decent defense, but we've seen what Josh Allen has been able to do against that defense. He's been able to pick them apart left and right, and they need a big bounce back. They need a bounce back in every which way. After 2 losses against 2 of the players in the AFC, they need to come out big and swing. They need to show that this is their division and nobody else's. I expect the Bills to win this game going away with the new coach for the Jets. I think they're going to lose some of that defensive firepower because Robert Saleh was such a great defensive mind. But in the end, Buffalo wins 28-17. We'll see what happened with Aaron Rodgers. He did suffer that lower ankle sprain, but he's Aaron Rodgers, so I expect him to be out there because if he's not, the Jets aren't going to win this game. But maybe this is a game that for the Jets that Breece Hall finally gets going. We've seen how bad Buffalo's rush defense can be, and they've been very susceptible to big runs. And Breece Hall is in dire need of a breakout after a really bad start to the season. But I think Buffalo wins. They hang on to that top spot in the AFC East, and the Jets just continue to ask questions going forward. But those are the picks of the week. Let me know what you think. Let me know where I was wrong. Let me know where I can improve. Let me know what your picks are for each game of the week in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day. Go Pack Go, and as always, God.